Our next story takes us to Seattle and it takes us to last night. We are going to be doing a behind the poll tonight. Generally, the march down to SPOG, the Seattle's Police Officers Guild, was basically totally uneventful. I actually really struggled to put together an interesting behind the poll. The other thing is that Spog played a lot of music, which creates copyright issues for us. And we're going to talk about that when we get to behind the poll. That's the last segment on the show tonight. I stopped shooting. Renee continued over with the group, and Chris Rojas, who has worked with us and is part of Converge, also walked over with the group. The challenge I have when protesters are de-blocking, that is, they're getting back into their street clothes. If we're streaming that, then we're essentially doxing people. And so generally when the protest comes to an end, we end scene. And the other thing is just the bike officers that were largely following them stayed on the sidewalk immediately to my left. We have that on behind the pole. And there was this incident. I'm going to go ahead and roll this camera. This is from Chris Rojas on this. I will say, this may be, this is like the trigger warning. There may be some things that are a little hard to see and take, and there is some really racist language in here. So with that warning, I'm going to roll the clip.
I've been a bystander on the sidewalk. This individual attempted to run people over with his vehicle.
We'll figure it out.
I'm willing to give eyewitness testimony to that.
We'll figure it out.
Fuck you, nigga! Where the fuck are you gonna go, asshole? Watch your motherfucking ass! Get the fuck out! Get the fuck out! Get the fuck.
So anyway, that's how things ended. And Renee Rackety, who is our field producer, also had video that we tweeted out and put on our Facebook yesterday. So if you want to see that, you can go to our Twitter at Malcontentment T, and you can see that video clip that's over there. Jennifer, the thing that sticks out to me here is the Chud. Again, there's a lot to unpack. The Chud argument. I got to hit the Chud button.
These are Chud.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
The Chud argument is, right, and it's the circular logic. Well, you want to defund the police, so why should the police take any action? But if the police don't take any action, it just feeds the justification to defund the police. Yeah. So, right, there was a crime was committed there in front of like 20 heavily armed police officers, and they just let it happen. And the guy was stopped, right? All it would have taken, like any one officer could have just said, dude, put it in park.
Yeah, absolutely. There was nothing done to try and reprimand people that literally tried to run down protesters again.
And the other thing that sticks out to me, it was a peaceful march. They were done. I think that's something that people have to really understand here, right? This was targeted. This was planned. And because it was all over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And what gets me is, you have all these right-wing groups and organizations who are, lamenting COVID restrictions because of, the First Amendment clause about the right to peaceably assemble. But that apparently only applies to their right to peaceably assemble, because when other people do it, it's somehow offensive to them and they feel the need to intervene in very violent ways.
And as we witnessed in Salem, Oregon last week, peacefully assembling includes pepper spraying police. There's an open investigation on whether tear gas was used against the police, not the other way around, but that they deployed These
Yep.
patriots deployed tear gas on police officers, breaking windows, destroying security cameras, tearing down fences, and threatening police officers with bodily harm. And the other thing that we saw was when they were ploinked by inert pepper balls filled with baby powder, they kind of lost their shit.
I know. It's very tragic when, you actually get some kind of repercussion for your action. But don't forget, they made it wholesome, though, because they brought their children and dogs.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes,
that,
yes, exactly. Of which they also condemn when people bring children and dogs. What was that? I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I said you got to rep that 1950s nuclear family thing. Um, it's just, and it seems to me like, I think I felt a little bit like I talked to you last week a little about like that felt like a little bit of a test about, what kind of action the police might take against them should they engage in more nefarious behavior as it gets close to inauguration time. But it's very interesting to me how little actually how little action was taken against them for what they did versus other protests that we've seen in the past where there's been this excessive use of force for far less.
And you and I have talked about this. We've talked about this on the show. Enough. The wrong person sees enough of this, and
Yep.
something truly terrible is going to happen.
Yep. Exactly. And I think we saw hints of that in Nashville over Christmas.
Yes, and we're going to talk about Nashville a little later in the show. I mean, there you go. There's the red truck incident. It's just toe curling, and the thing, it happened so fast. From peaceful march, I'm walking back to my vehicle, and then my phone starts blowing up. From people going, texting me and messaging me that a truck just drove through protesters.
Yeah. And I mean, what was the ending there? What would they have done if they'd actually killed some people? I'm just like, trying to rationalize what would have happened there. Would the cops have intervened at that point, I guess? Did they think there weren't going to be repercussions for that? Or was this, simply an intimidation tactic?
Right. Well, and it's not an effective intimidation tactic. And, I say, someone feeds enough of this, something terrible is going to happen. That does go both ways, right?
Yeah.
Somebody pushes too far the other way, something terrible could happen in the other direction because someone's going to say, enough, I've had enough. Yeah. And they're going to take things into their own hands.
Exactly.
And neither of those are good outcomes.
No, not at all. Yeah, I don't know what it's going to take to temper this. I don't know what kind of change it's going to take, but I feel like there's going to be so much resistance from those particular people, right wing, especially white men, who are so resistant to any kind of change that they feel might put them at any kind of potential disadvantage, that this is going to continue to escalate for some time.
Completely agree. And with that, we're going to roll over into our next story after we do a little pause for the cause, as they used to say back in the day.